Hello, everyone. Happy New Year, and welcome to another episode of Dawnversations. Today's guest is so inspirational. His name's Tim Kaufman, and he and his wife Heather have been on a journey, to say the least, and you're going to hear all about it. He has lost over 200 pounds. They both have had lifestyles that could have potentially put them in the grave. But after some realizations, they decided to go plant-based, exercise. So inspirational, you guys. I cannot wait for you to hear it. So I hope you enjoyed the episode. And if you want to follow them, I'll have all the information in the show notes below. Okay, guys, here we go. Welcome to another episode of Dawnversations. Today we have Tim Kaufman. Tim, did you come up with the nickname of the Fat Man Rants? Was that your idea?
Kind of.
I wasn't
Yeah.
going to call you that. I just who came up with that?
Well, so I when I first adopted my new diet, I was like food police. Like I couldn't believe how I felt. And so I was just ranting all the time about food. And my brother-in-law got aggravated. He goes, I don't want to hear about how you eat anymore. Why don't you go start a blog or something? So no clue what I'm doing. I watched a couple YouTube videos on how to set up a blog. I went to search up a domain name, and it's like, well, I want like fat guy or something, or former fat guy or former fat man. And so fatmanrants.com was an available domain. I picked that with like three other ones, and I had a colleague. I'm like, here, pick one of these post-its. That's my new domain name. So
Oh my God, that's awesome. So
yeah,
were you at your thinnest when you started your blog, or were you like,
absolutely not. No,
no,
no.
okay. How long has this journey been for you?
Well, I mean, let's say January 1st, I'm coming up on 10 years is the last time I ate
Oh.
any animal products. So, yeah.
Well, I was gonna save this for the end, but while we're talking about it. So, do you have like a plan for Thanksgiving? Does your family all conform? Do you have everybody over and they all just eat plant-based, or do you have turkey and just not eat it? Or how do you do the holiday?
Yeah, so that was kind of like a progression thing. But to give you an idea, we have pre-ordered, we have a small cafe that we do meal prep out of. And we have 100 Thanksgiving dinners that will go out Thursday. And they're basically Thanksgiving is so stinking easy because everything you eat on your Thanksgiving plate is pretty much plant-based except the turkey, right?
Yes, 100%.
So
Yeah.
you get the potatoes, the sweet potatoes, the green beans, the squash, like it's all there, and then we just put some tofu down.
Okay, so that was my other question. Do you buy any of the I don't want to insult anyone and call it fake meat, but you know what I mean. Like
Oh, it's
the
definitely fake. It's processed crap.
Oh, yeah, okay, so you do tofu, but you don't do, like, the soy curls and all that stuff?
No, we do soy curls because soy curls are actually the soybean and pod. And, yeah,
Okay.
we talk so Butler, we kinda know the people that own that company because we serve a lot of them in our restaurant. But yeah, it's the whole bean. So I eat whole foods, as whole as I possibly can. And that I consider because that's just a bean. They basically kinda slow simmer them. They run them through this little machine that pushes the whole bean through, and then they dehydrate them. So
I didn't
really
know that.
yeah, it's actually more whole than like a soybean itself.
Huh, I had no idea. I ordered them and I used them, once. I didn't use all of them, but I used them once, and I think there's probably a little, learning curve for how to cook them or prepare them so
Sure.
that they taste like food. 'Cause
Yeah.
I made them, they didn't. It was the texture, it was just off, and I thought, "I'm not doing this right." I didn't blame the soy curl. I blamed myself, but I figured it was something, user that I was doing wrong.
Yeah, I feel like all that stuff, whether it's tofu, soy curls, tempeh. It's gonna take on whatever flavor you put it with.
Yeah.
So, the soy curls, we do like a barbecue. We have an in-house barbecue sauce. We do a buffalo sauce. We do a fajita sauce, and like we almost make them like General Tso chicken too.
Yeah.
Um,
Yum.
but they're good. Yeah.
I'm gonna be hungry after this. Uh,
I've never had like an Impossible Burger. I've never had like vegan cheese. Mostly, to be honest, I didn't know that stuff existed.
oh.
I only had, and I think that was part of my success actually. I only had a very limited amount of food choices to go from because it was all I knew. I knew that I could eat rice. I knew that I could eat beans and potatoes, veggies, fruits, lentils, kind of whole grain kind of things. But that was pretty much it. So that's how I lost the majority of the 200 pounds. I didn't really learn about all these other fake meats and options until later on, and it's a struggle
Yeah.
because that stuff, the highly processed stuff, that'll put weight back on you just as fast as it came off.
Yeah, and it's so crazy because you can see the dual purpose of it. Like if that gets somebody away from eating meat and maybe closer to eating plant-based, that's great, but if it's also not good for them, then it's not. So, I don't know. It depends on what side of the fence you're on with that, but so let's go back. Were you a heavy child?
Yes, but I'll just add one more thing to that if you don't mind. You
Oh,
know,
no,
the
go ahead.
the thing too is it depends on, why you're changing your food choices. There's many people are changing their food choices just because of the animals. And if that's the case, I actually talked to the guy, the CEO of Impossible Burgers and Impossible Meats or whatever. But
Y-
he said they never went at this with health in mind. It was about the environment, and the animals. And if that's the case, and people aren't coming at this from a health perspective, have at it. For me, it was about health. And as my journey progressed, it became then about the environment, the animals, and the economy. But yeah.
Okay.
So was I a heavy kid? So I was a big kid. I grew up on a farm. I was a big, strong kid. But I don't think I was like above average until probably I got out of high school and honestly got married. I got married really young. I had just turned 20. So
To your current wife?
yeah, absolutely. So
Oh, congratulations. That's a
yeah,
long
and
time.
it's going to be 30 years in August here, and we started dating at 14. So it's been
Oh my
a
gosh.
bit.
You guys are super cute. I was looking at pictures before because I saw that she also went on this journey, but she didn't go on it when you started it, correct?
No, she was about 2 years after me. It's weird because looking back, it's like we didn't. I don't know. It's just so weird looking back because she had no real interest to go plant based. That was kind of a me thing. I think she didn't realize it would stick,
Yeah.
and she had some medical issues. She had a fibroid the size of a grapefruit. She
Mm.
went into the hospital to get surgery. She actually had to get a complete hysterectomy, and being in the hospital and that whole environment she was in, it brought her back to when her mom lost a terrible battle with cancer, and
Oh,
it just brought back all those memories. And I came to a room and she was just sobbing, and she's like, I can't control everything that happens in life, but I can control what I eat. And just like that, she flipped a switch, and went whole food, plant-based. But she's turned into a pretty competitive she's a beast runner. She really is.
oh, that's awesome. Well, okay, so for anybody that's just listening and they're like, "Who is this guy?" Okay, so you lost a massive amount of weight, switched to plant-based. You had been a former opioid addict, correct?
Yeah, right.
And a drinker. So I know myself personally, it is easy for me to start a healthy eating and exercise program. How did you get yourself to stick with it and not fall back on your bad patterns?
Well, because I was gonna die. I mean, and not looking back, it doesn't have to be like that.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people change because of a catastrophic event or they go to the doctor and they're like, 90% clogged on an artery. So, um, but for me, I was in really bad shape. I was born with this disease called Ehlers-Danlos. It's like a connective tissue thing. So, after going through a couple surgeries and getting this diagnosis that I was going to be in a wheelchair at like 25, I was like, these are the cards I was dealt. So this is just how life is going to be. And then I started getting into the painkillers, and that, it went from like Lortab to Percocet to Oxy, and then eventually fentanyl. And then when that wasn't enough, I started drinking really heavily. So at my worst, I would drink a liter of vodka right before I went to bed with about 20 opioids, along with the fentanyl. And by rights, I should have been dead.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I did that every single night. Like that was just my routine. Just like you'd brush your teeth before you go to bed. That's what I did before I went to bed.
Wow. Do you think you were trying to kill yourself?
Well, I think about that a lot, and I have two awesome kids. Well, they're almost 30 now, so they're a little older, but a wife that would do anything for me. So I don't think I was suicidal, but I was so tired and so hopeless that I think I went to bed knowing that I might not wake up, and I don't really know that I cared one way or another.
Oh my God, that's so sad.
Yeah, it was.
What amazes you now when you wake up? What is the thing that comes to mind when you wake up? What amazes you?
So it's so weird that you're asking this because I'm getting ready to do like a mini TED talk, and just like a local one. And that's literally like my before and after is going to bed, not caring if I wake up in the morning, to today, I have trouble sleeping because I can't wait to get out of bed to see what the day holds.
That's
Um,
awesome.
it's like such the complete opposite of where I used to be.
Ah, that gives me goosebumps. So you guys have a restaurant. Did you make the restaurant plant-based?
Yeah, well, pre-COVID, we set up a building, we leased a building out so we could teach people for free. They would just come take classes on Instapot, air fryer, that type of thing. And we packed the place out. Every class was quote unquote sold out. And then COVID hit, so the health department shut us down. We couldn't have gatherings anymore. So we kind of turned it into a little storefront, and at the same time, there were people that had lost their jobs, especially in the restaurant industry, because all the restaurants got shut down.
Right.
So we put a post out on Facebook, and we're like, "Hey, if you're hungry, we have food here." So I brought some Instapots and started cooking like little meals up, and it was just simple, like beans and rice and veggies. And I'm like, "Come down. We have these things called good neighbor meals, but the only catch is you can take 3 meals, but you have to take one with you to give to someone else." And people loved them. And so, we were doing it for free. But as things progress, they're like, "Well, we want to buy meals." And I'm like, "All right, well, long story short, now we have that kind of turned into a meal prep company. And Heather and myself, I think the first year we had over 20,000 meals went out the door just with me and her. And I have a job, and she had a pretty big commercial cleaning company at the time.
Oh my gosh.
We were dying. We do have staff now, but we've been open 3 years next month, and we've put out over 50,000 meals out of that little place. So
That's amazing. Is it just local or do you guys ship them frozen places?
yeah, it's just local. We try to get into shipping. It's just so hard. And our food is like it's all whole food, so it doesn't have a real long shelf life. And then no refined sugars, and we use very minimal salt.
Okay. So what was the plan you were I know you said you didn't know about all these extra fluffy things. What was it the plan that you were following when you decided to get serious? Did you go to Starch Solution and was that your first one?
Oh no. So I I turned on Netflix and I saw the title of this film, Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. And I had no clue what it was.
Mhm.
To put in perspective, I have the first deer I ever shot tattooed on me. We raised all our own meat. Very rare did we buy anything from the store that was like in the meat department. I drank raw milk because I grew up on a dairy farm. And so when I saw the title, This Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, it never occurred to me what exactly Joe Cross was doing. But basically, he consumes nothing but fruit and vegetable juice out of his juicer. He's from Australia, comes to the US, spends 2 months here, and he goes on this juice fast. And by the end of the film, he had lost like 50 pounds. He got rid of like all his prescriptions, cured himself of a bunch of like autoimmune stuff. And along the way, he meets all these inspiring people. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to do that. Never thinking that like I don't really do vegetables, you know? And it's weird because if he would have been putting raccoon turds in there and juicing them, I would have done that because I just wanted what he had.
Yeah.
I had just been denied for bariatric surgery, so I was in a bad place. Um, I was gonna die. There's no doubt. I had reached a point I couldn't put my socks and shoes on myself. My kidneys were shutting down.
At
My
what age?
That would have been about 38. Yeah, I got denied for the
Oh.
surgery. So my heart would beat so hard, I would put the remote on my chest while I was laying down, and it would actually get air. It would jump every beat of my heart.
Oh my god. Do you think looking back that not, being accepted for that surgery was a blessing in disguise?
Oh, 100%. It's the best thing that never happened.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Isn't that just where your heart is so set on something and then it doesn't happen and you think your world is crashing, and then later you look back and you're like, "Thank God that didn't
Yeah,
happen."
100%,
Oh,
100%.
that's awesome. So you did the juice fasting then?
Yeah, so January 1st coming up will be 10 years. I went on this juice fast. I learned how to buy vegetables. I learned that they actually exist, and, um, I I mean, it was nuts. Like, the first 3 days were terrible. It was hell. I wanted to just sleep. But day 4, I wasn't as hungry as I had been, and then by day 5, the coolest thing ever happened to me. I woke up in the same exact position that I had fell asleep in the night before. And that was really the drinking and all that stuff. I was just trying to pass out. I just couldn't. I was in so much pain all the time that I just couldn't sleep. And a lot of people think that when you take narcotics, they're a downer. So you get really like super like lethargic and stuff.
Mhm.
But even though you're, like, on borderline, like, unconscious, you can't sleep. It's the wildest thing. Like, you have insomnia, but you're so tired, you can't even
Oh,
function.
that sounds miserable.
And at, like, day 5 and 6, it's pure hell. But I got my first night's sleep, on day 5, and then, throughout the juice fast, I would wake up and, my eyes weren't cloudy, and my skin started clearing up, and just things kept getting better. And it was like so fast too. But with all these things happening, the weight dropping off, I felt more energy. I was actually waking up before my alarm went off. I also knew that I could not, live the rest of my life on juice. But because I
Yeah.
watched that, the film Forks Over Knives popped up.
Mhm.
And once I watched Forks Over Knives, it was like, what? Why doesn't anyone know about this stuff?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it sounds like it was kinda divine intervention for you too, like, all things
100%.
are just falling into your plate, and you're like, "Oh, I guess I should watch this too."
Yeah, and we had just buried my dad, my best friend in the whole world. His diagnosis was they found cancer in his lungs, and he was given 6 months, and he made it 6 weeks to the day of his diagnosis. And shortly after that, Heather's mom had leukemia that turned to lymphoma, and then ultimately a brain tumor would take her life. So we just buried our two most precious people on the
Yeah.
planet.
I'm so sorry, that's awful. It's lost awful to lose a parent, let alone to see them suffer like that.
Yeah, and both suffered pretty bad. But now I watch Forks Over Knives, and they're talking about cancer and different cultures and the blue zones and why. The only time I got advice about food is after I went plant based. No one said when I was over 400 pounds, hey, maybe you shouldn't eat 3 double whoppers for dinner.
Right, right, yeah, then
But as
everybody's
soon as I eat
concerned.
broccoli, like, yeah, I don't know if that's good for you.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
What has surprised you the most that you really, really like that you didn't think you would ever like?
Um, that's kind of a loaded question. I think I see food differently now. Um, I see kinda food I'm kinda selfish what I eat. I eat a lot because of the benefits I get from it. So
Mhm.
with this disease is a lot of inflammation in my joints, and that's why I was almost in a wheelchair. Um, but now when I eat the different colored vegetables, and I just right before I came on here, I just ate about 2 pounds of broccoli, and there was nothing on it. It was just, I mean, it was cooked, it was steamed,
Yeah.
lightly steamed,
Yeah.
but I enjoy it. Your taste change. So what used to like be really hard for me to eat is like it's just normal food now. And what's wild is this kind of goes back to your question that you asked a long time ago that I never got you. Your palate changes so fast. Like if you went and took a McDonald's cheeseburger to someone that's on an island that doesn't have any fast food, that would taste like garbage to them.
Right.
With all the salt and the oil and the sugar in the bun, like it wouldn't taste like food at all. And the truth is, when you start eating healthfully, the worst thing you can do is have cheat days. I love that people have cheat days, because all that does is reset that whole trap for you because it reignites your palate again. All your levels pop up again. The dopamine goes flying up, and it's no different than like you would never like stop drinking and then say, well, I'm an alcoholic, but I can go have 2 or 3 drinks at a bar because it's going to
Right.
start the whole cycle. And I think it's kind of the same way with food.
Is the exercise part hard for you?
So everyone sees me kind of like that's kind of what I'm known for. My story kind of blew up on Good Morning America, the Today Show, and all that. And people kind of that's how they see me is like I hate even saying the word athlete, but because I've done, Ironman, ultra marathons,
Mhm.
marathons, and I'm supposed to have this disease where I can't walk. But the truth is, the first 2 years of my journey, I lost most of my weight. I didn't exercise at all. I went for a walk. Walking was super good for me. I started hiking a little bit, and I didn't really get into the running till I lost most of my weight. And I wouldn't even call what I did running, to be honest. And so now, what can happen is all this massive exercise can really camouflage food addiction because that's happened to me, right? When I'm training for Ironman, there's some workouts I'm burning like 2,000 calories in a 5-hour bike session.
Yeah.
And man, you can get away with eating a lot of extra cashews and cashew cream sauces and all that stuff.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing though. Kudos to you to be able to do any of those things. A half marathon, a marathon. I mean, Ironman, that's no joke.
Yeah, especially in Lake Placid.
Oh my
Yeah,
god.
lots of hills to climb there, but
Do you have a bucket list of anything else that you really want to do, or do you feel like you've peaked?
well, I have one thing left on my list. I never really talked about this before, but it's kind of weird how journeys go. Like we have these expectations. And sometimes, we do this comparison game, which I know, everyone knows comparison's a thief, but sometimes the comparison game is who we were even last year. Because we have
Yes.
this idea of this forward progress, right? So we're angry about where we think we should be. And then if we ever get to where we think we should be and we slip, then we're thinking that we should be where we used to be.
Right.
And so what happened to me, I had this awesome progression. Everyone's watching. I'm in the spotlight. And I still have EDS. So I woke up one morning, I stretched my arms up in the air over my head, and my legs just totally shut off. I fell right on the ground and
Oh
I couldn't feel my
no.
legs. It was terrifying, to be
Oh
honest.
my god.
We didn't know if I had a stroke. We didn't know what happened. So super long story, super short. I go to spine sur well, I ended up through all these diagnostics and stuff. But what had happened is my spine, because of the EDS, my vertebra shifted so much that it had my spine like pinched almost right off. So I went from like running a race to the next week we had to get rid of all the like rugs in the house because I couldn't lift my toe up over like the doormat. It was nuts.
Oh my God. You're like, what is happening?
Yeah, so I had to get a surgery, pretty extensive one. And now don't forget, you know, in recovery with opioids, I made myself a promise that I would never once take an opioid again. Like I would rather die. Like I meant that too. So
Yeah.
now, never even thinking about this, they're getting me into surgery. They're basically cutting, they have about a 1 foot incision with 30 some staples. They got to go through muscle. Kind of, it was a bad surgery. They
Wow.
remove four of my bones in my back so my spine can be on the outside. So during all this, they're wheeling me in for the surgery, and I thought, "Oh no, what about that promise that I made myself?" Like, so
Of
now,
all the things.
yeah, well, it was like I was more afraid of that, like going back on my promise than I was like, I don't care if I never walk again. Like I made a promise. I have been burned so bad with withdrawals and the lies that I would tell myself. And I just that was one thing that I was not gonna, back down on. Like I made myself that promise. So here we are. Everyone's ready to go. There's a team of about 12 people doing this surgery. And I said, I got a little problem. I forgot to tell you guys that I will not have any opioids before, during, or after the surgery. And it's like everyone's jaw dropped.
Yeah.
So the anesthesia team, they talked to me. They said, "Look at like you're not going to relapse from this." And I'm like, "No, I'm not worried about relapsing. I made myself a promise." And so by the time I was done telling why I promised myself, that everyone was bawling. They said, "Okay, let's go have a meeting." They put the surgery off for about 20 minutes and they came up with a plan. And I'm going to start crying. I was able to do that whole surgery and it was extensive. I had drains in me. I mean, it was bad surgery. And I did the whole thing with no opioids before, during, or after. So
Oh my God. That's amazing.
then I also had, at the same time, I had a failed ankle surgery because they tried to fix that. My bones were crumbling. I went to the doctor thinking they could like, spruce it up a bit. And he says, you have two options, either amputation or we have to fuse you. And I said, yeah, but what about because I still had that dream of crossing that Ironman Lake Placid finish line. Well, it was still on my bucket list. And he goes, yeah, he goes, right now, instead of worrying about running, you need to worry about getting to your mailbox. So they took
Oh,
about
wow.
4 inches of my fibula. They cut my tibia, they cut my talus and tibia rather, and then they bolted all that together. So over the past 2 years, I've had some pretty crazy surgeries. I've been able to maintain that no opioid thing before, during, or after. But here's the cool thing. I really got into a bad place because, I go from all this massive activity to I'm laying on my back for 3 months recovering from my spine. Then they told me this last one, I got a surgery in last year. It was in June, and they said we're going to teach you how to walk in October. And by
Oh my.
yeah, it was nuts. Like it was crazy. But I actually skipped a cast because I healed so well, and I totally blame the food for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was back doing 5Ks when they were supposed to teach me how to walk again. So,
Oh my gosh. That's amazing.
yeah, but I mean, that's a very long way to say sometimes we get so caught up in where we think we should be. And it's hard now. I DNF'd Ironman. So I went in 13 months from a major fusion like that, almost losing the limb, to I competed in Ironman, knowing that I might not make the cutoffs. And I missed the bike cutoff by 15 minutes. But a week later, I did a marathon just to make sure I could do a marathon. So this year, I hopefully will I start training in a few weeks here and we'll take one more run in it and then I'm done.
Yeah, that's a lot for people. I've had a couple of guests on that have been in an Ironman thing, and that sounds so intense.
But I learned so much. I think it's probably been the most important 2 years of my journey, because I learned I had so much wrong. I had so much wrong. I I got confused with what's the destination and what's the vehicle. For me, I thought that whole food plant based is the destination, but it's just a tool in the
Mm-hmm.
process. And I thought goals were the destination, but the truth is the magic is in the habits that you build while you're trying to reach those goals. Because the problem with goals is, where do you stop? you know
Right.
my first goal was a 5K, and for me that was a big deal, man. That was a huge deal. When I started running, I was in immobilizers. My knees were locked out, and then I had to get like braces custom made so I could bend my knees again. It's like a 5K was like, if that's the only thing I did, that in itself is amazing. um
It is.
but I'm super driven and super goal oriented, so then the 10K, then the half, and then the full. And when I laid in that chair for all those months, I thought I had this all wrong, because the goals, um, they're good and they'll get you moving, but the habits that you build, everyone wants to change a lifestyle, right? But what the heck does
Mm-hmm.
that even mean? And because we tell people that, like, oh, you don't need a diet, you need a lifestyle change. Well, that's nothing. That means nothing. But what people have to understand is everyone has the power to make a good choice, right? Because we make choices all day, every day. But what we got to do is just focus on that next good choice. And when we string those good choices together, those are where the habits come from. And then once we get those habits, they'll set up routines that are healthy. And then those routines, when you put them all together, that's where lifestyle comes from. And I think, to answer your question that you first started with, what keeps me going when a lot of people, you watch The Biggest Loser and they lose multiple 100 pounds,
Right.
they're right back where they started a year later, because we're so focused on the goals that we forget that the magic is in the choices. And the only choice that we really need to worry about is the one that's right in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Who inspires you?
Oh, there's so many people that inspire me. And I think the other thing too, that's a great question, but I think that we need to be inspired by all different people from all different walks and all different areas of life, because that is another thing I learned on those 2 years. It's great to look up to athletes, or we want to look up to people to kind of be where they are, right? And when we should be hanging around people, that are kind of like-minded and are going, are at a place that we want to go. But I think sometimes we get too caught up on not having enough people to look up to. So, I have certain athletes that I look up to. I have certain authors that I look up to, and it's a whole mix of people. And I think everyone has something really cool to offer, and they might not be the heroes that we think are heroes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Isn't it kind of cool for you to sit back and think though that there's people that get inspired because of what you've done?
Yes, and it's scary too. It's definitely that might be another part of the reason that helps from not sliding back, right? I mean, we have
Yeah.
500,000 followers by accident. Um, and it's scary, because people, we do a live every Sunday, and people are watching, and
Mhm.
so, but I think that kind of service kind of thing, with the recovery, is kind of a two-way street. You're wanting to help people do what you did, but at the same time, you have to hold yourself accountable, because you have the responsibility. You can't be telling people one thing and doing another, right?
Right. Did you do therapy?
I didn't, and I should have.
Well, that's admirable for you to admit that. I was just curious because you've got some very good things, little nuggets here and there that keep you optimistic and make it seem like it's possible for other people. So it sounds a little bit like therapy talk.
Yeah, I think a lot of that, honestly, this is ironic that I'm saying this. Honestly, most of that comes from, it's kind of sound very woo-woo, but um I think the first thing that had to happen for me is figuring out how to love myself. I had failed so many times. I was so humiliated by how I manipulated people, especially Heather. I mean, she is the love of my life, and I learned how to get her to do things, go pick up scripts, go lie to doctors. I start, getting into this place where I just hated looking in the mirror because I knew what I was doing. The only thing that mattered to me was getting what I wanted. And if that meant lying, cheating, steal, whatever it meant to get it. And you do that for so long and you hate yourself. You hate
Hmm.
yourself for what you become. And so part of like pulling myself up out of that mud is realizing that none of this is going to change until I figure out how to love myself. And I had to fake it sometimes, I had to fake it. I did a little bit of journaling. It's easy to get into that trap. And another big one was gratitude. Another thing that sounds kind of woo woo, but it's really hard to have a bad day when you're grateful.
Yeah.
Um, and for me, a lot of that came from when Heather's mother was in the cancer hospital. The one of the things that I say on every interview is I remember going up there. She's struggling to live one more day, and I walked up to her bed, and she opens her eyes super slowly, and she said, "How's your knee?"
Oh my
And
gosh.
it destroyed me because what shows you what kind of person she is. But I walked out of the hospital that night, and yeah, my knees were destroyed. They were sore. They hurt,
Hmm.
but I had knees, and there was people in that hospital that had their legs amputated because of cancer.
Right.
And I was getting to go home, and many people, there's thousands of them in there, they weren't gonna come home. Like, they were gonna die in that hospital. So, my whole life, I had spent, like, wanting stuff or being pissed because I didn't have stuff, and I never stopped to be grateful for the stuff that I did have. And I think when you watch a loved one just struggle to hang on to life, it does 2 things. 1, you realize how much you have to be grateful for because it can all be gone tomorrow. And
Hmm.
2, it teaches you how precious life really is. We all know, like we all say, well, we're not here forever. Well, you know what? Do you really believe that? You don't really believe that until it's right in front of you.
Right.
And
You see it.
yeah,
Mm.
but
So, where can people find you if they want to be inspired and look at your Fat Man rants?
yeah, so well, fatmanrants.com is our website. And then we're probably most active on Facebook on our page. Oh, then we have another group set up. It's not as throttled as our page. And then I do a little bit on Instagram. I've been doing a lot more reels only because Facebook reached out and they sent me a coach. So I do reels now, which
Hmm.
I'm more into long form video, but I'm trying to learn. So
Yeah, because everybody's got such a short attention span. They want like, tell me everything I need to know in 30 seconds.
yeah, well, I think they got 7 seconds now. And in the 7 seconds, they tell you move camera angle, zoom in, zoom out, because even 7 seconds is long for some people.
Oh my gosh. Well, I appreciate your time so much in talking with me. You really are inspirational, and so is your wife. And not just for what you're doing health wise, but your marriage, 30 years. That's awesome.
Yeah, and we're young. I'm not even 50 yet. So
That's great.
yeah.
Yeah, you've got a long ways to go. You've completely turned it around for yourself and for your family. So you should be very proud of yourself.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I just want to add, and before we go, what happened to me is out there for anyone. It really is. And I think that's why I spend so much time and so many hours, literally hundreds of hours, sharing my story. Because there's days that I want to just walk away. I have this beautiful life now, and I want to just close the door on the past and move on. But people need to understand that it's not magic, it's not pretty by any stretch, and it's not easy. um
Hmm.
but it's uncomplicated. The concepts are really super simple, and they're out there for anyone that really is willing to be honest with themselves and make choices. And that's really all there is to it. There's nothing magical about it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why your story sticks out. People like to see the underdog win.
Yeah.
That's a
Winning, it's a
winning,
process
yes,
too, because you're never
right.
there, so yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Tim. I appreciate it, and I will be in touch for sure.
All right, Don. Thank you so much for having me. It was great
You
chatting
bet.
with you.
Yeah, you too. All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yo.